I'm Dr. Jennifer Huffman, and I'm here today with Dr. Bonnee Price-Linden, and we're going to talk about ABA. We have a lot of families that ask us about ABA, and we both have a lot of experience. We are here to talk about why we do not recommend ABA.
I am Dr. Bonnee Price-Linden. I'm a pediatric neuropsychologist practicing in New York and Michigan, licensed in both states as a psychologist through the interjurisdictional pact available across the country. I'm able to provide services in many states, and a list of that can be provided on my website, Linden Neuropsychological Services, PLLC, or through SIPAC. I mainly focus on working with children who are, to some degree or another, autistic and are having a very difficult time. And so I will see them as young as 8 months old, 13 months old. And now I do accept children up until 16, 17. I am recently appointed by the Detroit Medical Center, Children's Hospital, as an allied professional. And it is my hope that through that vehicle, I can provide services to a larger population of children who have not received services to date.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Emig Huffman. I am a fellowship-trained and board-certified pediatric neuropsychologist and fellowship-trained adult and geriatric neuropsychologist. I am a neurodivergent neuropsychologist myself, and I am really in practice to help other neurodivergent individuals. I do so in my private practice, as well as collaborate with Birch Price, and I'm excited to be sharing some social media resources and some paid presentations and consultations regarding our work for neurodivergent individuals in the workforce with Dr. Bonnee Price-Linden. Dr. Price-Linden, I would like to ask you if there is one thing you would want individuals to know about ABA, the public, providers, what would it be?
In my opinion, if ABA were a viable program, it would be working. And the children would move through the school system into employment, into college, into trades, and be successful. And ABA is not working by any measure. And the children are left, as they grow up, helpless. And families are left with hopelessness because they have invested so much time, if not money, in making certain that their children were receiving what they believe was the best methodology.
Thank you. I want to add, in our conversations together, we both believe that what success is authentic to that person. What was success to me is not the same as what your success is, nor is it the same as what the kids that we work with, their success. But that ability to have your own agency and develop what is true for you and authentic for your own well-being and success, that's what we're looking for, rather than a societal description of success. We certainly support that each individual has their own ability to get to the place that's true for them. And I believe I can speak for the both of us in saying that ABA does not get them to that place. ABA takes away the agency. It takes away the independence, as it makes them really dependent on complying to others.
So the role of ABA, applied behavioral analysis, is other control. So that is my first massive objection to the role of ABA. The second problem is that the difficulty in neurodiversity is the ability to process incoming information in a speedy enough way, and then to be able to take those thoughts and be able to express them. And we know that in neurodiversity, that is one of the biggest problems. It is the managing of information. Well, if the information has been managed by another person and the person who they're managing does not learn how to manage that behavior, then I'm very unclear what the goal of ABA is other than to control the behavior of the child. So those are the two issues. Third, we know with neurodiversity that it's working memory, how well the child can hold on to information. Well, if the child is not able to take the information in a reliable manner and is not able to express the information in a reliable manner, meaning that they always can control it, how can there be working memory? How can the working memory evolve? So many of the children that I work with have working memory or memory ability in very low levels, even when they're much older. And so they have not been taught how to process or receive or process information. And finally, applied behavioral analysis always had the problem of not being usable in other areas because they did not learn how to manage it themselves. So it's what's called, it can't generalize. And there is absolutely no research that supports that this is a viable method for treating your child. And yet, the pressure on parents, I would say this is number 5, the pressure on parents to give in, to go along with ABA, both from the schools, from the medical community, etc., has been enormous, creating a lot of fear in parents that if they don't comply, their children are doomed. I would beg to differ with them. It's more doomed that you have a greater likelihood of being doomed if you follow that method. So the AMA now has reconsidered. I think there is an investigation presently in Washington looking at exactly those issues. And I stand firm that I do not recommend ABA for any child. In understanding ABA, one must consider the emphasis on other directedness as opposed to self-directedness. And this means that either you're looking to control the behavior of the child exclusively, or you're looking to assist the child to be able to process information, which is what we call executive functioning. And that has to do with taking in information, holding on to it in working memory, and then being able to express it. And in the situation of neurodiversity, though, that is the critical difficulty, the speed in which people can respond and the ability to hold on to information. Again, the overview of that is executive functioning, and ABA does not address it in any way whatsoever.
I would agree with you, and I actually would believe that beyond not addressing it, it actually can be harmful to executive functioning. Fundamentally, executive functioning should be developing a problem-solving, decision-making capacity, self-regulation. When somebody outside of oneself is directing and controlling that based on their perceived behavioral control, it doesn't allow for the development of executive functioning. And you and I both share another area of interest beyond getting the word out about our anti-ABA stance, and that is individuals getting into the workforce. Neurodivergent individuals have wide variability of interests and abilities that are authentic to them, and many of those things depend on executive functioning. So when ABA is not only not addressing it, but potentially being harmful to executive functioning, we have a primary area that's actually creating an obstacle to others having long-term success, to whatever that success means to them.
I agree.
What is currently happening in Washington, and what is your involvement at this time in relationship to ABA?
So the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, I may be saying that backward, are at the direction of Congress, are evaluating the benefit of ABA following a multi-year study that for the Department of Defense that showed that ABA had no value. And because of the individuals who are involved in supporting ABA, and the amount of continued pressure that they put on Congress, Congress agreed to create an additional evaluation system of ABA. And I did actually speak at the public hearing and now have spoken to them about creating at minimal a national study on the best treatment plans for a neurodiverse population. But in the meantime, this investigation is a multi-year investigation, and they're looking at all the different persons who are involved presently in providing ABA and trying to find if there's any research at all that supports continuing that model for the Department of Defense, which in effect would translate into the general population. The American Medical Association has, while not disclaiming ABA at this point, is close to it. So we know there really is no benefit, and yet it is the only structured method that the schools can rely on for treatment. Well, given that it has no benefit and the schools have no other structured method, and what I'm describing is clearly not structured. Clearly, there is no cookie cutter. This is the quandary that is presently under investigation, because you are talking about hiring someone like myself or Dr. Huffman is costly. Mm-hmm. It's a concierge type of thing. Your child has to be evaluated and determine what they need, not what the Board of Ed thinks they need, or the Department of Defense. And so conflict, and that is what is going on presently.
I think one of the things you and I have both talked about that's frustrating for us is the level of individual working with the children. So you and I, between our undergraduate and graduate degrees, internship, postdocs, there is an amazing amount of schooling that we do to specialize in these areas and to work with the kids and the families. And ABA is typically done by individuals with maybe a fifth of that level of schooling, maybe, often being supervised by somebody that's not even in that home. So that's one of, I think, our biggest concerns is even outside of ABA, we have individuals that are spending the most time with very vulnerable children who have limited training in actually understanding the nuances of child development, understanding not just the behaviors, but what's going on underneath those behaviors. Some of the things the kids are doing are things they're doing because it's enjoyable. Some of the things the kids are doing, they're doing because they are frustrated. Some of the things they're doing because they have sensory issues. So when ABA is looking at that, and it is a cookie cutter approach, when it's looking at that behavioral approach, what should be happening is individuals at the level of ourselves understanding with that child and the family what their unique strengths and obstacles are and what needs to happen for that individual child, rather than that being directed and controlled by individuals with much less training than us, and really their training is just focused on behaviors.
Yeah, I would add one thing in our training, and I'm sure this is true for both of us. Following our doctorate, I had many years of supervision.
Yeah.
So supervision did not end when I became a licensed psychologist. Yeah. It has gone on way into the future. And in addition, I served as president of the neuropsych division for New York State Psych Association, and in that capacity, did a major event with Columbia University on the adolescent brain. My work has been formidable and published. And so you are dealing with a very different level of a person when you get into working with a neuropsychologist, a pediatric neuropsychologist of a level of experience. And I'm sure Dr. Huffman would equal my experience. So I think this is the big issue. Where do we go from here? Because again, there is a cost factor. When you bring on someone like us, we are at a different level, different caliber, and families I find have a hard time with the financing because this is not an insurance-based practice. It's a insurance is taken, but it's not an insurance-based practice. So I think that's the reality of our concern. So in order to bring on what I consider cheap labor, which is basically what has happened. And you don't want to bring on these top level people who are capable of assessing your child on that level and creating a long-term uh, uh, treatment, or I don't even know the word treatment, but certainly rehabilitation methodology. It's costly. And therein lies the conflict in the industry. I think that is why we are now in our next chat are going to be talking about our role in helping corporate America and the schools to adjust to, well, what will be, what can we expect? So from my perspective, I think we have set a full enough evaluation of ABA. What do you think, Dr. Huffman?
I think so too. I just want to thank you though, Bonnee, because many times when individuals hear about somebody that's opposed to ABA, they may be an autistic individual themselves, maybe a neurodivergent psychologist, or it could be somebody that has experienced other more positive venues. But to have you come on and say that this is something that you oppose, I think is really powerful. Dr. Price-Linden, can you share what would you want the committee to know that's making a decision about the viability of ABA?
Thank you, Dr. Huffman. I can sum it up this way. Number one, the use of ABA for the last very long period of time, basically decades, has resulted in a growing number of young people who are unemployable. Or if they're employable at the lowest of levels. And if they get graduate or higher levels of education, they often cannot maintain. ABA failed. Two, ABA was at the beginning of understanding about neurodiversity. It took place many decades ago when we thought this was an aberrant behavior situation. And now, as it has grown to be 1 out of 25, or basically 75% of your workforce, we have come to realize that this is not about aberrant behavior. This is about the way a person processes information, and that can be helped and assisted. But if it is not, and it is strictly done through intervention like ABA, very likely there'll be failure. Three, it is very hard for me as a practicing neuropsychologist for many years to understand that given the information we have in front of us, that we are still pursuing in some almost emperor has no clothes way of looking at it, that somehow ABA will shine. I am here to tell you it hasn't shown, it doesn't shine now, and it never will shine. It has failed.
Thank you. Can you clarify what you mean by employability? Does that mean that everyone will be employable?
As a pediatric neuropsychologist, one of the regrets I have is that I did not understand the longevity, that this was a lifespan issue when I first started. And so much of what I did was focused on successful functioning at the present. I now know that the long view of what I do must be front and center all the time. And what I mean by employable is that the person can reach a level of independence. And independence in this society, being a capitalistic society, would be the ability to earn a living, either by working in a corporation or by, so they would have to be able to deal with HR, with being self-employed, whatever the method, or McDonald's. I don't think that I think what that would be. I think that would be up to the person. But the fact is, they need an income. And to be independent, they need an income. And that must be my scope of practice now.
Dr. Linden Price, you mentioned that ABA does not lead to employability. Is there a reason why you think that that is the case?
ABA was focused on aberrant behavior and the control of it. ABA was clearly not designed to focus on how a child processes information and becomes self-determining. And so I think right from the beginning, its whole purpose was not for the benefit of the child, but for the benefit of the society in which the child was functioning. I guess the idea was that the child would benefit strictly because they could now function better, but that has not been the case.
You mentioned compliance training in reference to ABA. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
ABA was designed as a model for compliance, the compliance of the child with whoever was directing them. If we take aside the fact that most of the people working with these children are not professionals, barely professionals, under supervision of a behavioral specialist, I don't even know the degree of what that supervision even accounts for. Uh, there is some prescribed notion of what they want the child to be. And so compliance is, you will give me what I want through things like, look at me, no, look at me, now look at me, that type of thing where you're reinforcing the child's paying attention until the child is in a rage at what you are putting them through. It is about stripping away self-determination. The very essence of what the United States was formed upon, our belief that every person should be able to self-determine. That's a capitalistic society. Well, this is more a control situation, a controlled state. And these children have been living through a controlled state. They are angry, rightfully so. And there was no stopping it.
Dr. Price-Linden, there are so many charged emotional feelings about ABA, and we've shared and talked about those. But I love the way you're really just being very clear about what is this long-term concern that we have. So it is about the fact that neurodivergent individuals do not turn into non-neurodivergent individuals. It is how they process, it is who they are, and we want to make them more successful in the workforce. And that may be changing at all different levels of their developmental timeline. But fundamentally, it's going to mean making differences in the educational setting and in the occupational setting. And that is where we're going to be leading the next conversation. Or what are those changes? How do we do that? How do we make individuals have better chances at launching toward independence? And again, whatever that independence means to them.
I agree.